What's up, everyone, and welcome to Lucky episode number 13 of the Bronx and Big Blue Breakdown. I am your host, Brady Heslin, and today was not so lucky for Giants head coach Brian Daboll, and we are just going to jump right into it. I'm going to scratch the Yankee stuff that I planned today because obviously a lot of New York Giants news came out today, and the big one is that head coach Brian Daboll has been fired. Early afternoon, it broke that the Giants were firing Brian Daboll. His record was 20-40-1 as Giants head coach. He got off to a 7-2 start in 2022, and since that start, he's 13-38-1. 11-33 record since the start of 2023, and 5-22 since the start of 2024. So when you look at this, just on the surface, it's the right move. It really is. At the end of the day, he didn't win games, and he had a lot of flaws. He did have a lot of, good parts, I think, as well. One of that being, obviously, Jackson Dart. He was the big proponent for the Giants to draft Jackson Dart, and 2022 was also, obviously, he won the Coach of the Year, made something out of nothing with a not very good roster, winning a playoff game. There's a lot of memories from that season, but since then, it has been nothing short of a disaster. A lot of roster mismanagement that also can go to the front office, which I promise you we will be talking about that. But lack of attention to detail. He had really soft training camps, really soft preseasons. Just didn't really feel like he cared enough about the defense and the special teams. He treated coaches poorly. We saw that with Wink Martindale. They had a big falling out. He has a quick temper. And just kind of feels like he had a lack of respect from players. So I am glad that the New York Giants fired Brian Daboll. I honestly wasn't really expecting them to do it at this point. I do think the Jackson Dart injury probably plays a part in it. There were reports that they were rumored, John Mara was rumored to want to, I cannot speak. Let's restart. There were rumors after the Broncos game that John Mara wanted to fire Brian Daboll, but other people in the front office kind of stepped in and said, no, we're not doing this yet. But after this game, they did make that move. So Mike Kafka is now the interim head coach. I think that is the right decision. I know some people don't really like it. I think he was the most obvious guy to step in and do that as the assistant head coach. The offense has been the best part of the team this year, and he's the one that's, calling the plays for that. And he was also the runner-up for the Saints head coaching job in this past offseason. He's had other interviews. I know he interviewed at least with Seattle as well. So he has had head coaching looks across the league. This can kind of be an audition for him, not necessarily for the Giants, I don't think. But, he'll probably get an interview. But I think this is more of an audition for teams across the league, because I definitely think he could get a head coaching job this offseason with how Dart has looked and everything. But what I want to talk about more is the fact that it looks like the New York Giants are going to be keeping Joe Schoen. And this is where I get really frustrated, because this is just flat out the wrong move. I don't see any world where this works, keeping Joe Schoen. The Giants have already tried it twice. They kept Jerry Reese and fired Tom Coughlin, and they kept Dave Gettleman and fired Pat Shurmur. How did that work out both times? Not good. The Titans have done a very similar thing, and look at where they are right now. They are one of the worst teams in the league, along with the Giants. Firing the head coach and keeping the GM does not work, and it does not work for many reasons, but the main reason is all of the attractive head coaching candidates and all the top head coaching candidates are not going to want to come to a team where the GM is on the hot seat. Joe Schoen's not a good GM. I don't care how you look at it. He's not a good GM. In my opinion, he's done a much worse job than Brian Daboll did. He has not built a good roster. I have a lot of reasons here that I will jump into, but this is just so wrong. It feels wrong that I'm talking about Brian Daboll getting fired and not Joe Schoen. Like, really feels like Joe Schoen kind of stabbed Brian Daboll in the back a little bit. And just, it's just so frustrating. I mean, let's just jump in the reasons. Let me just give my reasons here. Number one, this team has no depth. One injury anywhere and the team is screwed. For example, Paulson Adebo goes down, now you have Deontay Banks at corner. Cordell Flott goes down, now you have 7th rounder Corey Black, who wasn't on the roster 3 weeks ago, and is it Jarek? I keep forgetting his name. Jarek Bernard Converse out there playing corner. And then, Jackson Dart. We saw that yesterday. Jackson Dart goes down, the quarterback that you were planning to start for a majority of the season. The quarterback that Joe Schoen wanted to start a majority of the season. Brian Daboll was the one that pushed for Jackson Dart to play. Joe Schoen is the one that signed Russell Wilson and wanted Russell Wilson to play for more of the season. That's the guy you put in, and the offense looks dysfunctional. I mean, whenever Andrew Thomas gets hurt, the team is completely screwed. Completely screwed. Look at the record with Andrew Thomas versus without Andrew Thomas. Micah McFadden goes down. Now you have 6th rounder Darius Muasau going in, and he's awful. And then he goes down, and then you have Demetrius Flanagan Fowles and other guys that just are not good. Swayze Bowman and stuff. So the team has no depth. Malik Neighbors, I can go on. Malik Neighbors gets hurt. Darius Slayton gets hurt. Now you're playing Lil Jordan Humphrey and Jalen Hyatt, a guy that Joe Schoen traded up for that is now unplayable. And Gunnar Olszewski, a slot receiver, kick returner, playing outside receiver. Terrible run defense all 4 years under this regime. I hate Shane Bowen. I think he's a terrible defensive coordinator. I think he should have been fired today as well. But Joe Schoen's done him not a lot of favors. I mean, he got him a good pass rush, but this run defense is awful. For the past 4 years, teams just run down the Giants' throats. Leonard Williams and A'Shawn Robinson, he trades Leonard Williams and A'Shawn Robinson walks, I believe this was 2 off seasons ago. They do nothing to replace it. Rakeem Nunez-Roches was defensive tackle 4 2 years ago. Now he's starting. They've done nothing to replace it. The only thing they did was they drafted Darius Alexander this year in the 3rd round, but we knew he was going to be a little bit of a project when you drafted him. He was not going to be a plug-and-play guy. And on top of that, the Giants, Wink Martindale and Shane Bowen, 2 defensive coordinators, they have flaws. I think Martindale's better, but still, they both have flaws. But the one thing they had was they both had a track record of having good run defenses. So why is it that when they come to the Giants, the run defenses suck? Maybe it's because the personnel that Joe Schoen has built is bad. He lets top talent walk and replaces it with worse talent at a similar money. Top example, Xavier McKinney. Xavier McKinney, a young budding star with the Giants, was a free agent 2 years ago. He leaves and signs a 4-year, $68 million deal with the Packers. Then 1 offseason later, they signed Javon Holland for a 3-year, $52 million deal, who is a worse player. So this shows Joe Schoen going against what he believed. Because, okay, maybe he believes, you know what, too much money for safety. I'm going to go after other positions. But no, he goes after Javon Holland, and I have nothing wrong with Javon Holland. I think it was a good signing, at least at the time. But why didn't you use that money for your homegrown star in Xavier McKinney? And there's other examples. Obviously, letting Saquon Barkley walk is a big thing. This is the regime that signed Daniel Jones to the 4-year, $160 million deal. Don't forget about that. Moving on, draft classes weak outside of high-end first round. I'm going to read off the Giants 2023 draft class, and I just want you guys to hear this. Traded up from 25 to 23 to draft Deontay Banks, an unplayable player. And the only reason he's playing is because of injuries, and the team doesn't invest in depth. 2nd rounder, John Michael Schmitz, who is at best an average center. 3rd round wide receiver, Jalen Hyatt, a guy that they traded up for in the 3rd round and was a guy they were going to draft in the 2nd round if John Michael Schmitz was off the board. This guy's unplayable, played 0 snaps yesterday, despite your wide receiver 1 being hurt, your wide receiver 3 getting hurt during the game. You have your kick returner who has, 150 yards in his career receiving? Your kick returner, who's typically a slot receiver, you have playing at outside wide receiver over the guy that you traded up for just a couple years ago. And I'm trying to pull this up. I can only find this year's stats, but you get the point. Gunnar Olszewski's not a wide receiver. He's a kick returner, and you have him playing over Jalen Hyatt. He has 204 yards in his career. You have him playing over Jalen Hyatt, a guy that Joe Schoen traded up for to draft. And then you also have Lil Jordan Humphrey, who is sitting on your practice squad, who is starting over Jalen Hyatt just a couple weeks ago. So this is a regime that cares too much about optics and not putting good players out on the field. But I digress. Continuing, you have 5th-round running back Eric Gray, who is on PUP currently. He has a fumble issue. And then you have 6th-rounder Trey Hawkins, who got cut. 7th-rounder Jordan Riley, who's on the practice squad. And then 7th-rounder Travarius Owens, who also was cut. And this was a draft class that he was clamoring for after the draft. I'll read off. I want to go through all his draft classes because I want to show you guys that outside of high-end talent, he had a few, decent picks. But outside of that, like Kayvon Thibodeau, 5th overall. Is he a game changer? I'm not sure about that. Is he worth the 5th overall pick? I'm not sure. He's a solid player. And then after that, you have Evan Neal, complete bust, unplayable, active for 1 game, didn't even take a snap, not even on special teams. Wan'Dale Robinson, solid pick, but is he 2nd-round worthy? Josh Azudu, unplayable, 3rd round. Cordell Flott, taking a little while to develop, but looking better. Daniel Bellinger, 4th rounder, he's solid. Dane Beltman, 4th rounder, backup, first safety off the bench. Micah McFadden, he's looked decent, but he's hurt, and it's tough to tell. And then you have DJ Davidson, Marcus McKeith, and Darius Beavers, all either not on the team or basically unplayable. Then 2024, you have Malik Neighbors, who's obviously a superstar, but then outside of that, you have Tyler Newman, who has regressed in year 2 and looks bad. Drew Phillips, who is a roller coaster of a player. You have Theo Johnson, who again is kind of a roller coaster of a player. Tyrone Tracy, who looked like a hit, and this year, I'm not really sure. And then Darius Musa, who's not good. So, they always say that, the first-round picks are the easy ones. Those are the easy ones. But good teams are built in those late rounds, those 4th through 7th round. And then, Tyrone Tracy is, he looked good last year. This year, it's a question mark. Cam Scadaboo looked really good. But again, it was his rookie year, only played half the season. You want to call that a slam dunk, but you could have said the same thing about Tracy last year, and, it's tough to tell. Outside of those two, you have solid contributors, but you don't have any, stars that are coming out of those rounds. Let's see. And then I, built it with, this is the perfect time for the Giants to reset. Genuinely. If the New York Giants fire Joe Schoen, this is a really attractive head coaching job because you have Jackson Dart, who's this young, promising quarterback. Cap space is beginning to open up, especially in the 2026-2027 season, which is next year. And then they're going to have a high draft pick. They're going to have some other young players for cheap. You have Neighbors, Cam Scadaboo, Andrew Thomas is locked up for a while. Brian Burns is locked up for a while. And then the schedule doesn't look too bad next year. It really doesn't. If the Giants fire Joe Schoen, I'm going to have so much more optimism with this team because I could really see 2026 being similar to 2022 season, but you have a better quarterback. But the Giants are sticking with no, let's stick with Schoen, who's done a bad job building the roster that loses. That also, it's not just Brian Daboll that is 20-40-1 in 13-38-1 after the 7-2 start. That's also Joe Schoen. That's Joe Schoen's roster. So, I feel like I could go on and on. I might do a more in-depth video. This are just quick notes that I put together. It's just the wrong decision. And then Shane Bowen staying is also a joke. I don't know. I can't believe the Giants are doing this again. And Tim McDonald needs to be fired. John Mara's nephew, if you didn't know who that is, he's John Mara's nephew. I gotta look up his exact role, but he's in his 12th season with the Giants, and he's only gone up. And He's one of the only guys that has, like, what's the right word for this? He's a common denominator when you look at these past 12 seasons. He's one of the only guys that's been there for all 12 of those seasons. He is the director of player personnel. He needs to go. It's not going to happen. It's just not, because John Mayer's not going to fire his own nephew. But he's a problem in the front office. So Giants has got to rip the Band-Aid off. And I don't want to hear, Bobby Skinner said it great. I know he's one of my favorite Giants creators. If you have not, actually, he is my favorite Giants creator. If you don't follow him, you definitely should. But he said it great. Like, John Mayer's health should not be an excuse for not doing a GM search. This is a $10 billion business. Like, if John Mayer can't do it, find someone that can. Like, it's a joke. It really is a joke, because I can already see it. I can already see what's going to happen. They're going to keep Schoen for a fifth season or whatever, and they'll probably end up firing him next season. And if they don't, they'll fire him the year after. Like, this is not a long-term solution. I don't understand why they're so high on Joe Schoen. It's not, like, this is not a good team. It's just not. Like, I don't understand. This team hasn't won a road game since last year. Like, this is not a good roster. And, like, when these guys were hired, they were a package deal. Like, they both came from Buffalo. It really felt like they were a package deal. And now they're breaking them apart, and you're firing the only guy that's really done positive for the Giants. Because 2022, that was not Joe Schoen's team at all. It was not Joe Schoen's team. Like, he brought in some guys, but they didn't have a lot of cap space. That was mostly Dave Gettleman's team. And then what I will give Joe Schoen credit for is they improved the bottom of the roster. And that's something I don't think they focused on enough. Like, they brought in a Fabian Moreau, Isaiah Hodgins, it's Jalen Smith, the linebacker. Like, they brought in guys to, they didn't go out and get, like, a Brian Burns that year. They went out and the roster gap was this. They went up, they raised it to here. You know what I mean? So they didn't do that these past couple of years, and that's why their depth is so awful. And you have guys like Corey Black and Swayze Bowman starting on this team. So, yeah, I didn't even mention that the Giants, arguably their two best players, Dexter Lawrence and Andrew Thomas, are not Joe Schoen guys. They're not. He inherited those guys. So it's just, I feel like I could go on and on. I gave a pretty long rant there, but Joe Schoen needs to be fired. The fact that basically all the beat reporters are uniting, even the ones that are, like, super pro John Mayer and whatever, like, they're all uniting me. Like, okay, even if I didn't agree that they should have fired Daboll, you got to fire both. Like, if you're going to fire one, you got to fire both. Yeah, I think I pretty much hit everything. I'm going to try and make sure of it. Again, I might make another video. I don't know if I hit everything. I'm probably forgetting a lot of talking points with Joe Schoen, but I hope you get the point. At the end of the day, this team is not winning games. Part of that's on the coaches, but part of it's also on the players. Again, part of it's on the players, but part of that is also on the front office and the team and the guys are building this team. So, I'm just looking through. I'm trying to find this one post. All right. So last thing I'm going to talk about with Joe Schoen, I'll probably mention it later in the episode, but so the Clem report, who works for Barstool, this was reposted by Bobby Skinner, posted, if you don't want Joe Schoen back, make sure the Giants know by calling their offices at 201-935-8111. Community relations is option 3 on the automated message. So I truly believe if there is enough heat, that Joe Schoen will be fired. I know they think highly of him. I know they want to lead the next head coaching search, whatever. But there's still 7 weeks left in this season. If this team gets embarrassed, and if fans, really, show their displeasure, I really think that Joe Schoen could still be fired. Again, it's a long way. And that's kind of why I'm surprised, honestly, that they fired Daboll now. If they wanted to keep Schoen, because I think now everything focuses on Schoen. No one's going to be like, oh, Mike Kafka, the interim head coach sucks. Like, this team sucks. No. All the blame is going to be going now on ownership and on Joe Schoen. So, there are a lot of guys that, we're focused solely on, Brian Daboll sucks, Brian Daboll sucks, Brian Daboll sucks. Okay, now he's gone. Now it's all on Joe Schoen. So, yeah, I mean, if this team gets embarrassed, you're going to be blaming, Joe Schoen. And that also could be part of the reason why they're keeping Shane Bowen, because a lot of the blame could easily go on Shane Bowen as well. But yeah, so I think I pretty much hit everything. They did ask if Brian Daboll, or Sean McDermott said Brian Daboll not under any type of consideration for return to Bill's coaching staff. I think Brian Daboll's a really attractive offensive coordinator guy this offseason. I think he's going to be a guy that goes somewhere, becomes an offensive coordinator, and then eventually I think he will get another head coaching gig. I'm not going to jump into potential candidates in this episode. I just didn't have the time to really research it, and we're going to have we have 7 weeks, so we're going to have plenty of time to do that. So yeah, pretty crazy that in a Giants-only episode, we're 20 minutes in, and I haven't even talked about last week's game. But I'm really trying to, make sure I hit everything here. So yeah, all right. I think it's time to move on now. I will be talking about the game yesterday against the Chicago Bears. The New York Giants lost 24-20, another fourth quarter collapse. Just another embarrassing game. I mean, this is a game you have to win, and they just collapsed. So Jackson Dart, he had one of his best games yet. Obviously, he left the game with a concussion. I'm sure everyone, heard about that. But his numbers, I'm trying to pull up his stats here. Sorry, I kind of shifted my focus away from the game and more on the Brian Daboll, Joe Schoen stuff. But if you look at his stats from yesterday, he was 19 for 29, 242, no touchdowns, no picks. But he also ran for 6 for 66 and 2 touchdowns. But he did have the fumble where he got the concussion. That was arguably his best game yet, in my opinion. He looked great. Just great accuracy, extended plays, just looked comfortable. I think he outplayed Caleb Williams. So yeah, I really like what I'm seeing from Dart. The injury really sucks. I hate to say it, but kind of expected it to happen at some point with his play style. I did see people blaming Brian Daboll for Jackson Dart's injury. That's not on him, in my opinion. That's a situation where the Giants needed Jackson Dart's legs, and that was a situation where he couldn't not take a hit on that play. It's just unfortunate his head smacks off the ground, and it looked like he was knocked out cold. And that's where my frustration is. I'm not even totally sure who to blame. It's got to be the training staff, Ronnie Barnes. First of all, the fact Ronnie Barnes is in the Ring of Honor is a complete joke. This team has injuries year in and year out more than other teams, and they're constantly, I feel like, misdiagnosing injuries, and that's what happened here. So Jackson Dart fumbles the football, head smacks against the ground. He doesn't try to get his own fumble, and Jackson Dart's a guy, he's never not going to go for his fumble unless he's hurt, and he's just laying there on the ground motionless. The Bears have an 8-play drive, and then the Giants get the ball back. They run like a wide receiver screen, and then they hand it off. Can't remember in what order. And then the third quarter ends. And then the fourth quarter starts, and Russell Wilson is in at quarterback. And everyone's like, whoa, what is going on here? Turns out Jackson Dart goes in concussion protocol. He does not pass, and he goes to the locker room, and he has a concussion. So, it's ridiculous. I mean, this is your franchise quarterback. Arguably, at this point, he's I mean, I would say, Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, and probably Brian Burns. Like, he's one of the most valuable players on this team, if not the most valuable, just giving the position and whatnot. And he's like the Giants' prized possession. And you're rolling him back out there 2 extra plays when he has a concussion. Imagine if he took a hit. Like, the Giants are lucky Jackson Dart did not take a hit on those 2 plays that he was in. Or what if the quarter didn't end? What if it was the start of the 4th quarter? Were they going to have him out there the whole drive with a concussion? Like, just, how do you not, like, how does no one see that? Like, there's spotters and stuff. Dude's head smashes against the ground, and he's not moving. And they put him back out there for 2 plays after the Bears had an 8-play drive. Like, no one went to check up on him and be like, hey, Jackson, let's just go take a walk. Like, you hit the ground hard for the second, or probably more than second time of the day. Like, let's just make sure, right? No. We're going to run him back out there. And Giants did this earlier in the year when Dart had a hamstring injury. And you could tell he was hobbling around. And they just kept him out there. So, again, Brian Daboll, again, in the Thursday night game where he's screaming in the tent, loses $100,000 because he wants Jackson out on the field. So, like, they clearly don't have this guy's health in mind, and it's super frustrating. Let's talk a little bit here about Russell Wilson. So, I honestly feel bad for the guy. I honestly do. He's so past his prime. He cannot run like a basic offense at this point. He's either check down, deep ball, or sack. He should not have been put in that situation. And this is another situation where the Giants, focusing on optics, Jameis Winston should have been the backup when the Giants put in Jackson Dart, because Jameis Winston can run more of an offense that Jackson Dart can run than Russell Wilson. And he definitely should have been the backup after that Thursday night game where Brian Daboll literally goes in the medical tent, cussing out the team doctor on the sideline because Russell Wilson had going for 2 plays. And that was after a win. The Giants could have easily been like, okay, we're going to switch, Jameis and Russ. And it wouldn't have even been that big of a headline. But now I feel like they have no choice. They have to go to Jameis Winston next week. Like, no excuse. They have to, especially with Daboll being fired. It won't be a huge headline because that's what the Giants are worried about. They have to make that switch. And I think Jameis gives them more of a shot to win than Russell Wilson. Jameis, he's probably going to throw a stupid interception, but at least he can throw to the middle of the field. So that's my thoughts on it. I'll talk about it a little bit more when we do the looking forward, but let's move on to the run game. Yesterday, so they were 8 for 2 at halftime, the running backs, and they ended up going 14 for 79 in the second half, and the running game really started to get going there. Devin Singletary kind of put the team on his back with that 42-yard reception where he got hit 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage. That was Russell Wilson's somehow his best play of the day. I mean, I guess he did have an 11-yard scramble, but he just did nothing for a quarter. And the Giants, I mean, they had a minute 50, 2 timeouts or something like that when they got the ball back there in the last drive and just did nothing. So, yeah, but Tyron Tracy started to get a little bit better too. I just can't believe they're still rolling with 2 running backs. That's going to kill them at some point. It really is. Maybe now Kafka's the head coach, they'll elevate Turbo Miller. They got to at least, why haven't they brought someone in? If you don't trust Turbo Miller enough to elevate him to be your 3rd running back, why are you not bringing in Jamal Williams or something like that? Why? I don't get it. And again, that's another flaw of Joe Schoen, the roster mismanagement. I didn't even talk about the kicker situation. But you guys know about that, the kickers thing. That's another Joe Schoen flaw, and Brian Daboll flaw too, but also Joe Schoen. Darius Slayton stepped up. Wan'Dale Robinson was solid, but he had that big drop. He wouldn't have gotten the first down anyway, but you got to catch that. I already talked about Gunnar Olszewski playing outside receiver with Hyatt on the roster and Lil Jordan Humphrey on the practice squad. Just ridiculous. Honestly, you might want to see Gunnar Olszewski at corner over Deonte Banks. Pretty good pass breakup. Helps the Jackson Dart stats. Yeah, that's all I really had. For the defense, I thought the Bears honestly bailed them out. There were a lot of drops. Zacchaeus for the Bears was awful. He had at least 2 or 3 drops in that game. Caleb Williams was overthrowing guys a lot. Could be the wind. But yeah, the run defense was also awful. Let's look at the box score here. I know they at least allowed 2 rushing touchdowns. Teams just run down their throat. They have no respect for the Giants. Feels like this is going to be another offseason where the Giants need to build in the trenches. They're going to need a guard. Likely need a tackle if Lunar leaves. And then they need defensive line. They need another defensive tackle that can stop the run. But, again, it's so hard to not talk big picture. Yet we still have 7 weeks left in the year. The Bears were 28, 171, and 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, DeAndre Swift, 6 for 80. Caleb Williams, 8 for 63, and Kyle, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he was 7 for 28 and a touchdown. So, his run defense was bad. Deontay Banks, again, terrible, but kind of got expected at this point. He's just not a good football player. His penalty took a Dexter Lawrence sack off the board, and then a Cordell Flott penalty took a Abdul Carter sack off the board. I thought the pass rush they were good when they blitzed. When they blitzed 4, I thought they were solid, but nothing like insane. Like I thought they should have done better against the left tackle because he was a UDFA for Chicago. They also had a lot of missed sacks. They had Caleb Williams a lot. Kayvon Thibodeau especially. I think there were at multiple times where he should have had Williams down for a sack, but Caleb Williams was kind of slippery and just kind of slipped out of there and was able to make a few plays. I did want to talk about the field goal from the half-yard line. I was going to talk about this more if Brian Daboll didn't get fired. But a lot of people really slander him for it. I understand the thought process. I probably would have went for it, especially since it was from literally the half-yard line. Like, just tell Russell Wilson to, like, jump over the top or something. Or even put it, I guess you can't technically put in, no, never mind. You can't put in Jameis, but, just do some sort of, I don't even care if they do a tush push. Like, I know you can't get much, they weren't getting much push up the middle. Just trust your guy to get half a yard. I know, I understand going up 2 scores, 10 minutes to go with Russell Wilson a quarterback, but the defense was not playing as good as the numbers looked, and obviously hindsight should have went for it, but also could have potentially gotten like a safety opportunity from the half-yard line with how the pass rush was looking. They couldn't finish sacks, so, maybe you trust your guys there. It's tough to say. It kind of felt like he was coaching not to lose and wasn't coaching to win. That's what that move felt like to me. But I don't think that necessarily lost the Giants the game. So, Jamie Gillen as well. We'll get to him in the duds, but just terrible kickoff. Got benched from kickoff duty, and then he shanks that punt in a critical situation. Unlike him, I feel like he's actually been a solid punter for the Giants, but not yesterday. So, moving to studs and duds. The only stud I have for this game is Jackson Dart. Honestly thought this was one of his best games of his career. 13, jeez, I was looking at something else. 19 for 29, 242, no touchdowns, no picks, 6 for 66 and 2 touchdowns in the fumble. There also were some drops that kind of hurt him. There was a Daniel Bellinger. I don't think it was technically a drop, but it got him in the hands, just like a perfect pass. Every week I, feel like more and more that like we got our guy, and he's got to keep building on it. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to play this upcoming week, but yeah, so just a great game from Jackson Dart overall. Not a ton to say. Unfortunately, we couldn't see him in the fourth quarter. Obviously, if he stays healthy, the Giants win that game, but at the end of the day, he didn't stay healthy, and the quarterback they wanted to start a majority of the season could not step up. And then the duds, John Mara. This isn't even about the game. This is just about the Brian Daboll situation. Just the fact that they are keeping Joe Schoen is just unbelievable. It really is. It's a malpractice. I don't even know if I'm using that word correctly, but it's... Has he not learned from his past mistakes? Like, honestly. I mean, he's tried this twice, and it hasn't worked either time. The Titans have tried it. It doesn't work. Like, learn from your past mistakes. Rip the Band-Aid off. I don't care if he's best friends with Tim McDonald or whoever, whatever unfireable guy he is in the organization. The guy's not a GM, or a good GM. He did a worse job at GM than Brian Daboll did at head coach. This guy should not be the GM moving forward. We need a clean reset. If we get a clean reset, I really think this team can win games next season. I really believe that. With the right moves, you bring the right guys in, I really think this team has potential for next season. But under Joe Schoen, I have no faith. He does not deserve to have another draft at the top. I mean, he'll probably pick a good player at pick 3 or whatever it is, which he should. But then after that, I have zero faith in anything that he does. And I'll just be waiting for him to get fired because it's inevitable. He's going to get fired. It should have been after last year. It wasn't after last year. It should be right now. It's not going to be right now. It better be at the end of the season. But I don't think it's going to be. He's going to get another year, probably get fired. And then what do? You have a first-year head coach, you have a second-year quarterback, and no GM. Do you fire the first-year head coach? Or do you do the thing where you keep the head coach and you bring another GM, and then it's just weird, and it's like, it's a mess. It's a mess if they don't fire Joe Schoen. I mean, it's a mess right now, but it's an even bigger mess if they keep Joe Schoen, doing things. And then Jamie Gillen, of course, I already kind of explained that, whatever. Moving to This Week in History, I picked a kind of gloomy topic, considering that's kind of where the Giants are at right now. So on November 4th, 2019, the Giants lost. They lost. I'm doing a losing one. At home to the Dallas Cowboys by a score of 37-18. This was Monday Night Football, and this was also the Black Cat game. So the bad luck with the Black Cat, that was that game, and it was on November 4th. So looking forward, Mike Kafka's the head coach. He's the head coach of this team. He's got 7 games to kind of show what he can do a little bit. I don't think he's going to be back next year, nor do I think he should be back. But we'll see what he can do. Then you have the Russ or Jameis question. It needs to be Jameis Winston. Russell Wilson cannot run the offense that the Giants want to run. Russell Wilson, great guy, no longer a good football player. Please retire. And then, they got the Packers at home. Packers 8.5-point favorites. I feel like teams that have an interim head coach typically do good in their first week, like a Jeff Saturday situation. And then after that, they're just terrible. So who knows? Maybe this is if they had Jackson Dart, I'd be feeling a lot more confident, obviously. But I never can find myself to root for the Giants to lose. But in the long run, it'd almost be better for this team if they just get embarrassed the rest of the way. Hopefully guys stay healthy, but if they get embarrassed the rest of the way, if the fans can get loud, and then Joe Schoen can get fired. I honestly think that's the best case scenario for this team at this point. Because then they have no choice. Then ownership has no choice. They have to fire Schoen. But yeah, I feel like I hit everything. It's just, I don't even know what to say anymore. I really don't. I got everything off my chest. Fire Joe Schoen. That's all I really have. There's a pretty good chance that I will be going to a Giants game next month. If I'm going to that game, I really am tempted to doing some sort of fire Joe Schoen, paper bag, sign, really anything. Because this guy should just should not be the general manager of this football team. So kind of hit all my points there. Any questions, obviously you can comment them and whatnot. I think I hit everything. Probably will do a more in-depth video at some point with this situation as the year progresses. I scratched my Yankee stuff for today. I got the hoodie on, but I scratched that. I did see that they hired an in-house first base coach. So the Trent Grisham qualifying offer, Tim Hill club option. I also talk about that stuff. Kind of just wanted to scratch it, focus solely on the Giants in this episode. We will dive back into Yankee stuff next week. So yeah, it's going to conclude this episode. Pretty much just everything I wanted to say. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next week. Let's go Yankees. Let's go Giants. Fire Joe Schoen.